Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
Welcome back. This is an entertaining episode that brings together two previous guests to talk about how to go on a date. Note, we approach the conversation largely from the perspective of traditional stereotyped gender roles between men and women. I'm going to return later with guests who can talk about the topic outside of some of these stereotypes. My guests present a lot of helpful advice, from the obvious, brush your teeth, to the critical, approach your dates with a sense of adventure and authenticity. As you'll hear, the three of us are good at dating and speak with confidence, but I recognize that dating can be difficult. I hope the information will help you make the experience a little more pleasant, perhaps even fun. One way to do that is to stop thinking about dating as finding a life partner and a future parent for your children. The person you're meeting could become a friend, business partner, or may fix you up with someone else. This should be heartening for you, the solo listener, who may not have the goal of finding the one anyways. One announcement before we begin. I've launched a listener message board on the Solo page at petermcgraw.org. There will be general topics about being single and living a remarkable life. There will also be topic threads for each episode, including this one. So if you want to help build the community and have a discussion about what you're hearing, go to the Solo page on petermcgraw.org and please contribute. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest co-host is Jill Cohen. Jill grew up in Miami, attended Emory University, received a master's in English from the University of Colorado, and resided in Boulder for many years, which is where I met her. As a traveling ER nurse, she's worked in Colorado, Wyoming, California, Florida, and Australia. She joins us now from Truckee, California, where she recently started working as a nurse for a virtual medical team. You may recognize her as a guest on episode 10, What Makes a Life Remarkable. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
Today's guest is Dalia Karnovsky. Dalia is a comedian, performer, and dating coach. She works privately with clients on everything from online dating profiles to breaking up and moving on. She hosts the podcast, Not Your Therapist, which is one-on-one dating coaching for guests both anonymous and not. She's the co-creator and co-host of the live show, All My Single Friends, which is half comedy show, half live dating app in Los Angeles. She also returns from being featured in episode 16, Making Single Friends and More, where she critiqued Jill and my dating profiles. Welcome back, Dalia.
Thank you so much for having me.
I might have misspoken having Jill as a guest co-host. In some ways, she's just also, frankly, a guest here today. But we are here to talk about how to go on a date. From deciding to planning to prep to the actual meeting and follow-up. So we're going to go through each of these steps. As I said, deciding, planning, prepping, meeting, and follow-up. And I'm going to be throwing some questions your way, submitted by listeners. And in particular, I want to thank Kim, Kevin, and Jane, who sent me about 100 questions. So, deciding. I think this might be the most important topic, no?
I don't know. Can you clarify what you mean by deciding to go on a date?
Yeah, do I want to ask this person? Do I want to say yes to a request for a date?
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
You know what, Dalia?
Right off the bat.
That's why you're on. Tell me why.
Because dating is a numbers game, and I don't know how much work you're doing in your head before deciding to go on one date, but it's one date. Just go. Just ask. Just go. You'll find out real quick if it's not the person for you. But there's nothing to be gained by staying home it's 2 hours of your life. You don't have to go for the whole day. You don't have to sign up for a week, but going on one date, that's not a big decision.
I would say there's another category. It's like deciding to engage in the dating world. Like, so there's like the big category and then the small category of individual dates. So on one hand, Dahlia, I totally agree with you. I think you're never going to know unless you actually go. On the other hand, though, I had a very empowering experience recently. Recently, God, it was like a year ago or something. But I think I have like a story for everything, so I'll try to keep them short. But there was a guy who I matched with on Bumble, I think, and we talked on the phone. We were going to go on a date that night. We talked on the phone. He was a physician, and he proceeded to tell me a story. Somehow we were talking about our work because I'm a nurse. He's a doctor. And he proceeded to tell me a story about how he yelled at a tech who was working for him. Yelled at this person because they didn't do something right. And he started laughing and he said, isn't that funny? Isn't that hilarious? And my response was, as the person who sometimes gets yelled at because I'm the nurse, and also just as like a human being with a modicum of decency and kindness, no, I don't think it's funny at all. And it was very empowering in that moment for me after initially saying, yeah, sure, let's go out, to then say, you know what? I don't think so. I'm going to skip it. Thanks for asking, but I'm going to skip it. And so I think, on one hand, yeah, go for it, try it, meet people, you never know. On the other hand, if you get a bad feeling about something, it's your life, it's your choice. You don't have to go out with anybody.
Well, absolutely not. No, I would agree with that. And I think what I should have said, well, no, I agree with what I said, but I do think, and I know we're ignoring the COVID dating right now, but one interesting thing I think that's come out of it is people doing these FaceTime dates or phone calls first. And it's meaning they don't have to go out for a whole evening, so because people aren't, that's a much bigger commitment now, health-wise and everything. So I used to always recommend to my clients, do a phone call or a FaceTime before you go on the date. And I kind of left that out because to me, that kind of qualifies as a date. Like, I'm kind of like, that's your first meeting in a sense.
Meeting. I like to call it a meeting.
So I'm fine with, if you talk to someone on the phone and you're like, definitely not, then of course you should follow your instincts and you shouldn't go.
Right. So we're basically saying the same thing.
You're agreeing. I see.
Totally. Yeah.
So, okay, but this idea of deciding, so what are some things, like, what about kind of red flags, omissions, things where it creates some uncertainty? Like, I get it. I get this idea of like, do it, be adventurous. Like, you don't know until you try. But then there are situations where like, there's some things in a bio, or maybe there's something that comes up in a conversation that starts to give you pause, or there's missing photos or photos only from one particular angle that makes someone seem tremendously appealing. And so those that kind of stuff, making those decisions, I think can matter. No, if as soon as you walk into a room and you just go, okay, this is not a right fit for me.
Yeah. And that's where I think the preliminary call or FaceTime is great, is that it prevents you from having to walk into that room. And so for people who are a little more cautious or busy or whatever it is, they can do that. Especially if it's a photo concern, FaceTime is great for that. If it's a phone call, you can always ask questions about those things that gave you pause, and you can, prod a little bit and get some more information. You'll see a theme with me, which is that like I err on the positive side of things, and rather than looking for red flags, I encourage people to look for green flags. So I think we are very conditioned to look for red flags. And I also think the term red flag has gotten totally overused and blown out of proportion. Like, to me, red flag is, yes, someone who's bragging about yelling at, someone who works for them. Red flag would be, alcohol problem,
Yes.
bad temper, misogynistic, you know, something along those lines. But something like, well, he has roommates, or he likes this band that I don't really.
Yes,
and people love to just be like, that's a red flag. And I'm like, that is not a red flag. But let's separate those two things, because we all know couples get together all the time who have nothing in common, who disagree about everything, who have different musical tastes. So like, I think there's a point with online dating where we get too micro and we start looking at all those things. And yes, be looking for if they're a good person. But other than that, I don't consider things a red flag.
I agree with that. I think, my particular one is someone who really likes live music. Mm-hmm. I think live music, I understand why people like live music. I'm just not excited to go to see live music, but I should not treat that as a reason to not see someone. Like, you can manage the live music preference.
They can go, that can be their thing they do with their friends, they do by themselves. That's a beautiful thing to have separate interests, you know? Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing to have things that are something you do on your own. So yeah, something like that I would not consider a reason not to date.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do Lindy Hop dance, which is like a vintage era swing dance. It's a niche hobby for sure.
For sure.
I have rarely dated someone who does Lindy Hop, but it has been so great. There was one guy I dated who would come to a performance if I was having a performance.
Totally.
And that was wonderful. And it was great for our relationship, because then he'd see me up there doing my thing. And it was something that he could be proud of me for, and something I could show him. And then he did other stuff that I wasn't into, but I was supportive of him. So it was a really nice thing for us to have our separate interests. And the other thing you said, Dahlia, that I think was great was that you can ask about certain things. Mm-hmm. If you see something, don't necessarily write the person off, because sometimes people make typos. It could be as simple as that. It was hilarious. I became friends with the guy who I met on Bumble. We didn't wind up dating, but he had on one of his fill in the blank things something to the effect of like, have and want more for kids. And I was like, that doesn't seem congruent with anything else in his profile, but let me just ask him. And so I did. I on one of my text messages, I said, hey, can I ask you something about your profile? And he wrote me back. He said, oh my gosh, I must have been drunk when I filled this out. Like, joking around. He's like, I definitely don't have kids. You know,
wow.
I definitely don't want them. I was like, oh, good. You know,
great.
We can proceed then. So
that's such a great example. I think people do that so much. And it's also like, most people are not good at writing profiles and not good at picking pictures. Like, that's not a natural skill that normal people are good at. That's like something, probably someone who's really good at that is not necessarily someone you would want to date too, except for me, of course. But I think it's a great point. If you see something, you're like, that's weird. Like, why would you not give them the benefit of the doubt and ask the question?
I do. I like this. I'm going to say, I like Jill's point about, do you even want to be dating? Like, I think this is all predicated on a desire. So solo is not about sex and dating, although the opportunities as a solo are often greater for new partners and so on. But I came across this article by Shani Silver, who has a podcast called the Single Servings Podcast. She wrote this for Medium, and she sort of talked about the person who hates to date and the challenges that they find dating, as she described it, in this sort of hookup culture where people have mismatched preferences, where some people are looking to date and other people are looking to just fool around. And as she said, this is quoting her, she said, I freed myself from dating as a mandatory chore is one of the greatest gifts I've ever given myself, which is why I fight so hard to help others to do the same. That is to be able to recognize what is it that you want to do. Just because singles tend to date or have the opportunity doesn't mean it might be right for you. So this conversation is predicated on a desire to be in the game, so to speak.
One of the first things I talk about with my clients is, do you actually want to date? Do you want to find a partner? Let's figure out what you really, really want, because I think it's definitely an assumption that people don't want to be single. And if they are single, they're trying not to be. And I don't think that's true at all. I think there are plenty of people who thrive on short-term relationships, other types of relationships, and do not need to be in a long-term relationship. So I totally hear that.
Okay, so let's move on to some more important ones, perhaps, or at least equally unimportant ones, the planning. So how to go about the planning, and I think this sort of encompasses the how to ask, the medium, and then also the choice of what to do.
Are we talking about when you meet someone on the apps?
Well, let's be a little bit apps focused, but let's also imagine it's a normal world and that you might be meeting people in real life, as limited as that might be at the present moment. It won't always be like this. So let's make this podcast worthwhile for 10 years.
Great.
So I'm going to clarify like Dahlia did with deciding. Planning, you mean planning a date, like where to go, what to do?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that's right. And I'm assuming it's somewhat, this is a joint decision. There maybe someone initiates, but it's always a bit of a negotiation, I think.
I think so. I mean, there's obviously a lot of different ways it can happen. When it comes to the apps, and you may disagree with me on this, because I know, like to get a lot of information, but I generally don't like app chat conversations to go on for too long without getting to the, should we grab coffee? Should we grab a drink? Would you like to meet in person? Or nowadays would be like, so should we do a video chat? I just think there's only so much you can learn, and it really builds a false sense of intimacy when you're chatting and asking all these questions. It's like everyone is so safe behind their screens. And what you really want to do, because you might hop on the phone and know right away this is not the person for you, but you couldn't have known that without that information. So I think the sooner you can kind of level it up to either a phone call, a FaceTime, or just, hey, let's exchange numbers and go get a drink, the better.
I agree too, because you can also lose a lot of momentum if you text too much. It just can sort of, know. So,
and not everyone is good at it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I want to say I agree with that. I think let's assume you get to that point where you chat on the phone, you do a FaceTime, and you'd like to meet this person in person, right? And so planning that moment, those moments. What comes to mind? Stories, experience, ideas. Like, I'll give you this is a listener question.
Sure.
Do I pick or let her? So this is a guy who's writing this. I read, this is someone getting back in the game. I read that women like when you pick a spot, but it seems weird to me, if we go somewhere too near her, that kind of a thing. So
I think, again, the best thing to do in these situations is ask. And just say, I'm happy to pick a spot in your neighborhood, but if you prefer, we can do a midpoint. What kind of food are you into? Or what kind of atmosphere are you looking for? And then you can do the legwork, which is really nice, I think, for the guy to do, because generally speaking, the women have a lot more getting ready to do and a lot more kind of like, in terms of their safety, a lot more risk. I just think it's nice if the man puts in the legwork at the beginning. And I'm obviously speaking about cisgender. Well, it doesn't have to be cisgender. I'm speaking about traditional stereotype gender roles when I say this, but someone should put in a little more legwork in the beginning. And I think generally speaking, it's best to do a drink or coffee, keep it to 2 hours. Don't do dinner. I'm not that into like an activity for the first date. I think the first date, you keep it kind of short and sweet, where you can really look at the person and see them. And then the next day is great to do like an activity or something where you get to be a little bit more free in your bodies and relate on a different level. But I think keep it simple for the first one. I think it's really, really nice if you can ask the person what they like and where they'd like to go, and then take it from there.
Axe throwing is date 2.
I think date 2, yes.
Scary. What do you think?
So it's so funny when I think this has evolved. And earlier in my dating life, like in the 2000s, we didn't know that, it's probably a good idea to just go get coffee, as opposed to planning some big thing for the first date. So I think, there was one date I went on that we, decided to go do karaoke for the first date, which is such a bad idea for a first date that it wound up being amazing. We had the best time. And I look back on it and I think, these days I would who would do this now for a first date? Really it's become such a rule. for good reason, to make the first date more of a "do you want a second date" kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's
but
fair.
You never know.
That's true. Well, my guess is if you met that person for coffee, you would have had a good time.
Right.
Sure.
That's the way I think. I think this idea of keep it to an hour or two, keep the costs low, have an escape plan is not because you don't have to be worried about missing an opportunity with someone you kind of click with, or a lot of my listener questions use the word vibe, that you vibe with. It's to avoid the situation where you don't anti-vibe with the person, and so that's where I think that this advice originates from, is the fact that it's often hard to make a match. And so, most of the time it's not going to be, let's go axe throwing next time, or let's do karaoke.
Well, and I think it's always also a good plan to plan something for yourself afterwards. So whether that's meeting up with a friend or having a fun plan to stop at your favorite bookstore that happens to be by the bar. I went to acting school, and they used to tell us, after you go to an audition, no matter how it goes, get yourself a treat afterwards, because you want to build up that muscle of like, yes, rejection is hard. Yes, it's hard to be an actor and put yourself out there, but you're going to get a treat every time, good or bad. So I kind of think with dating, whatever that is, and keep it short too, I think is a great idea. A lot of times, people will be like, I had the best first date. It went on for 7 hours. We went here and we went there. We went there. It was the best date of my life. And then they never hear from the person again. Or then their next date is like really disappointing with that person. And I'm like, you want to leave both of you wanting more. You want to seem like you have something else to do, not in like a fake way, but it's just like, I don't have 6 hours to give a person I just met. It's a lovely romantic idea, but you'll get a little burnt out and you'll feel weird about it after. So if you're just like, I'm going to give myself something to do after, so I have to go, I think you're setting yourself up for a better experience.
So we all agree.
I think so. Yes.
Yes.
We all agree. This is a listener question that asks, is it okay for a woman to initiate asking out? So this is, again, a little bit more of the traditional gender roles. My experience has actually shown that a guy likes it, and he'll try to see you. Dahlia's making, you listeners can't see this, but Dahlia is making a face into the camera right now.
Look, I think, again, it's context dependent. So, like, do what you feel. I'm not going to tell you not to. There's definitely something hot about, like, asking a guy out that you meet in person. But I think, and this is rather old-fashioned and controversial of me to say, but I think that
cut the rather.
I think when you ask a guy out, you're already showing him that he doesn't have to do the work. I think you're going to attract, this is a lot of times I get people who are like, I'm always with guys that I end up taking care of. I mother them. I do everything. I do the emotional work. I make the plans. And if you don't want to attract that, then you kind of have to sit on your heels a little bit and let them do the work. First time you're setting up that dynamic.
Okay. Joe, I know you want to say something. I have to jump in.
Sorry.
No problem.
No, you should not apologize, because I think that advice is largely good. But I think what it overlooks is a guy who doesn't need taking care of, who has a lot happening and does well with women. And what I mean is, like, you can stand out as different for a guy who's a bit progressive, who, is often like, it would be an appealing date in that sense. And so it could give you, I agree with you. If the guy's a bit of a loser and he's not really like on top of things, then I agree. You're just going to drag him around. And he's not going to be a good date, and he's not going to be anything more if that's going to develop. But for a certain group, a small group of guys who are sort of a little bit more appealing, I think it can have a beneficial effect.
I would agree. I would totally agree. I think if there's a guy who's totally career driven, not really thinking about dating or whatever it is, I would never say don't do it, but I would say if you've noticed that that's your pattern and you're always ending up with people that you end up doing all the work, there's a reason, and you want to see if you can get someone to put in the work for you. I mean, it's also fine if you ask them out the first time and then they pick up after that.
Yes.
I'm fine with that. But you should just be paying attention to how much effort is being put in on both sides, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just I say this because I see it a lot. I see it with friends, and I've seen it in my own personal life, where if you're sometimes if you're a little too defensive, you can miss an opportunity with a really appealing partner.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by defensive?
Like, I think what happens a lot of times, especially if you're an appealing person yourself, is you get a lot of inbound offers. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of texts, there's a lot of likes, there's a lot of swipe rights, there's a lot of phone number asking and all those kinds of things. And so then there's a tendency to sort of put a wall up and to play a lot of defense and to be like, okay, you really need to impress me. You really need to stand out. And I think that makes sense for the 95% of those inbound things. But the issue is the 5% that you want is often someone who's equally appealing on the male side of things. And that guy, again, we're talking traditional, and we should be careful about that, because actually I think this works.
So do I, yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're heterosexual or homosexual. It's the idea that like the people who are sort of most interesting, it's the 80-20 rule, about 20% of the people get 80% of the attention. And so I just would hate for someone who, you're like, wow, that guy seems really great, and he's a little slow, a little unresponsive, and you stick with your normal game plan, which is make him work for it. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, he may not work for it because he may not need to as much.
Can I jump in for a sec here?
Yeah, please. I'll stop.
So here's what I think. I think you have to know yourself and be yourself, right? If you're the kind of person who likes to extend yourself to somebody and reach for someone and you don't mind doing that, I think that's okay. If you're not the kind of person who hangs back and pretends not to be interested, then don't be that person as a strategy to get a date. However, I will say, also think about what you want. Do you also want someone who's going to reach for you? And do you also want someone who's going to extend himself or herself towards you? And so if you are constantly reaching and always doing the work and always doing the reaching, you don't leave any space for someone to come towards you. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there where you have to sort of balance this being yourself and being truly who you are, but also maybe growing into another part of yourself that also like lets someone come to you, because that's really joyful and fulfilling and satisfying. That's something that other people like to do, I think. And if you don't give them the space to do that, then you don't give them the space to do that. So those are my thoughts on that. And kind of like Dahlia said, so yeah, it's okay. Sure. Ask a guy out first, but also sort of notice, is he reciprocating? Is he?
Yes, of course.
Is that important to me? And do I want that? And if you do have to hang back a little bit.
Again, when we can move on, I'm not far away from you two on this. I wouldn't say, but I think there is something about, there are problems with traditional gender roles.
Well, I just want to talk about a concept that I love that's from a long, long time ago about dropping the hanky.
Yes. Okay.
Which is, you don't have to ask them out, but you can let them know that you're interested. You can, or, that can be what the ask out is like, we should go out sometime. Let me know. And you've done your work. You've let them know. If they can't pick up the hanky after that, then okay, we're moving on. But that's kind of, I think, a little bit of a compromise move.
Yeah. Cause Peter, I totally agree with you. I think these days, like I never want to, pretend like I don't care and pretend I'm not interested. If I'm interested in a guy, there are ways I'll definitely let him know. But I really want to make sure I also don't bark up someone's tree when they're not available, not interested, not making any moves in my direction either. So yeah, I'm definitely not saying ladies, don't do it. And of course, I'm talking in traditional gender roles here. I guess this would be for anybody. I'm not saying don't do it. I would say go for it, give it a try. But also, if you want someone to, extend themselves back to you, then you have to give them that space as well.
Right.
Okay. Fair. Good. Any other ideas in terms of the planning? I mean, if I could summarize for a moment, it's sort of this idea of get there, meet the person, but don't overcommit time, money to this. You have a lot going on.
Right.
Spend that hour, 2 hours over a drink, coffee, walk, something that you can assess, and then save the excitement for later times.
There's plenty of time.
Yes, there's plenty of time.
And is it that second, let's say you meet someone and there's sort of mutual interest, attraction, and so on. For the two of you, is there more, like, is dinner fine the next time? Should you, is it okay to go a little bit bigger, a little more special, a little more fun, have some adventure?
I think activity is great for second time. And activity doesn't have to mean like karaoke or like wild bungee jumping, something where, because if you just go straight to dinner, it's like you just spent 2 hours sitting across from each other. Now you're going to spend 3 hours sitting across from each other. Like, even if you just go to a movie and then get a drink after, so you have the movie to talk about, it's like something to just like change it up a little, because it's just a lot of pressure, especially if you had a good first date, which I'm assuming you had a pretty good one. If you're going on a second date, you're already putting pressure on that second date. I actually think second dates are the hardest, because then we have this expectation, but we're not yet comfortable. And we're still sussing this person out. So I think second date, if you give yourself something to do that might still require a little bit of physicality, or just take you both out of your comfort zone a little. I'm watching this dating show on Netflix where their second date, they went rollerblading and they were both falling down all over the place. They were catching each other and helping each other and laughing. And it's like, you can't help but create this, vibe with another person when you kind of go through this experience together. So,
and then when someone like breaks their arm, you get to see how the other person is in a crisis in the ER.
Exactly.
I am 6'5". I will not go on roller skating or ice skating dates
Probably
ever.
Smart.
Your center of gravity is way too high.
It's only risk, very little reward there. So prepping for it, and I'm thinking the actual preparation. So you've set the date. It's agreed upon, and then there's some period of time before it happens. Anything as you think about preparing for it? I have some topics and things, but I just want to get your off the cuff reactions.
I would say number one is make sure you have some time before the date to decompress and let go of wherever you're coming from. A lot of times people cram in a date right after work. Give yourself at least like 20 minutes. You can sit in your car. You can walk around the block, change your clothes, change your feeling. Like, you want it to feel fun. You want it to feel like not a chore. You want it to feel different from work or something else that you did that day. You're not getting lunch with a friend. So I think, like, play your favorite music, have half a glass of wine, don't go overboard, but like pick your favorite outfit. I used to have the same outfit that I would wear on every single first date just because I knew it looked good. I didn't have to worry about it. I always felt good. It was like I was putting on it was like time for the show. I'm putting on my costume.
It's like a costume, yeah.
Yeah. And it
You're
put me in a certain headspace,
yeah.
and I was like, it's time. And, just have
what was the outfit?
It was a little floofy skirt, little floofy mini skirt, and a little kind of crop top. Not too short, but like long sleeved crop top. So you just show a tiny bit of midriff just to be like, hello, I'm here. And then a boot, just a boot, because I'm short, little heel. But it was like flirty, fun, feminine. It wasn't how I dressed in my everyday. It wasn't like jeans that I wear out with my friends. It was like, I'm putting in the effort for you, which I think is really important to show someone. I care about it. I'm in a good mood, and I would make sure I had enough time to kind of like decompress and get in a good headspace, because, you don't want to bring all that.
I bet you got a lot of second dates, Dahlia.
I did.
Well, this is green light Dahlia.
That's right. That's right. I love them. I was going on like 6 dates a week at one point. I was having a blast.
Wow.
Oh, that poor outfit was.
I know. I still have that shirt just as like a memento. I can't even. It's like worn out. I can't even wear it, but I still have it in my drawer.
You gotta frame it.
Like single life.
Dahlia's dating Hall of Fame.
Yes. It's true.
Well, I think the dress, I think is a good note, Dahlia. I have a friend who he never drives to a date. He always takes Uber.
Smart.
And he's in LA. And his rationale is, besides the fact that he might have a drink or two, is he wants to arrive relaxed. And when you're a passenger in an Uber, it's typically more relaxing than driving yourself, finding parking, and all of those things. And so I think that creates the kind of right headspace.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a perfect segue, because I was going to say definitely eliminate things that will make you feel self-conscious or uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if having hairy legs makes you uncomfortable, make sure you've taken care of that before you go. Get rid of the unsightly hair so that when you're in the company of that person, you feel confident. Yeah. So, an outfit that you look nice in, or like a grooming thing or whatever that you you're not going to feel insecure or unattractive or lacking confidence. So take care of that before you go, so that you can just go and enjoy the date.
I'll give you one. Yeah. And this is, I like to get to wherever we're going early, and I stake out good seats.
That's great. I love, speaking of typical gender roles, I love when the man does that, because it shows that he cares and he's putting the effort in, and then the woman gets to have her arrival, or whoever it is gets to have their arrival.
I also think the crop top has arrived.
The crop top has arrived, everyone. Woo! I used to text my dates though and say, I think I would say something like, can we meet outside the bar? Because I hate that awkward moment of walking in and looking for you. There was just something, even though I'm like an outgoing person, I just hated that moment. I didn't want them to see me and me not to see them. So I would make them meet me outside. And most of the time I would do that, not all the time. So I think, that's something to consider too. I also tell people, make sure you've had a snack. No one wants to show up hungry and tired, and you're going to get drunk real quick if you have a drink on an empty stomach. Brush your teeth. That's a big one. People don't think of that. You got to do it. Brush them. It's pretty basic, but just make sure you're in your best possible headspace and you're feeling good. Another tip from acting school is they used to always say, don't go on an audition in an outfit you've never worn before.
Oh, yes.
Not a new dress. And even though you're like, this is fun, it's you don't know, that dress could fall off of you. You just don't know with new clothes or new shoes, those hurt. So go with the tried and true, I say.
Yeah, the reason I had said about the early in the seating is because then it can make it easier to talk.
Totally.
You're dealing with sound, lighting. With a face like this, I need it lit as well as possible. And I care about aesthetics, and so that's one of the things. I want to ask a question. So we've been sort of dancing around this a little bit with how you get there, what you wear, the fact that you flossed, but the right mindset as you're preparing. So I'll offer one, which is, well, I'll ask it as a question, but to be a little bit flirty in the sense of you've said it, and then some people choose, okay, it's set, I'll be quiet, versus be a little playful and have some fun before it, set a little bit of expectation. This is going to be a good time. And then the other one is, what's the mindset walking into this do you two think someone should have?
Jill?
Well, I think about this a lot when it comes to dating, and I don't love strategy necessarily with dating. And I don't know if that's, because I really feel like if you go with a recipe or a strategy, I think there are, of course, good things to do that are going to help you put your best foot forward, which that's part of you, your best foot forward, your best foot. That's part of who you are. but I also think you don't want to attract something different that resonates with you or is right for you by sort of putting on an act. Or I mean, I don't think we're talking about it as an act, but I said that for lack of a better term. But I think
tactic. I mean, the worry is it's like the pickup artist type stuff is really distasteful.
Yeah,
I will say.
And on the other side of it, like the rules type stuff, you know, for women. And I feel like you really could attract the wrong person by doing that, by sort of pretending.
How am I gonna? Am I gonna attract the wrong person by being a little flirty?
No. Oh gosh, no. No, I thought. I think maybe I misunderstood the question. But I think if flirty isn't who you are, you know, if flirty is really uncomfortable for you and you like to talk about, I don't know, sports, or you like to talk about science, or, you know, the bug that you saw on the sidewalk before you walked in, like, I don't know, maybe do that. And the girl sitting across from you might be really turned off by that, but then maybe she's not your girl. You know, it's the girl who goes, oh my gosh, I saw that bug too. Wasn't it so weird? And then you start talking about a bug and it's, you know, next thing you know, you really connected about something and it's very genuine. I don't know why I thought of a bug on the sidewalk.
I like that. I would love that if someone started talking to me about that.
I've never talked to anybody about a bug on the sidewalk, but if that's like really what got you kind of, you know, woke you up in that moment and that's what was on your mind, why not say it? Because how the person you're with reacts to that could be very telling about your connection or your potential connection. So
I think the mindset thing is very much that it's about being authentic. But I think kind of what I think of when I hear mindset is a lot of people go into a date wanting to figure out right away, is this my person? Are we going to be in a relationship? Are you the one? And I think that's a huge disservice to yourself. I think you want to go in to learn about a new person, to get curious, to ask them questions about what you're interested in, what made you go on the date with them, and assume they are not your person. Assume you're going to meet an interesting person. Before the days of COVID, you might get a makeout out of it. I was a huge proponent of that, but you know, whatever. But just assume you're going to learn about a person. It's also like, I think important to note that you could meet a person, they could become your friend, they could become your business partner, they could not be right for you right now, but 3 years from now, they could know the person that you're supposed to date. And if you have a good time with them, but it's not a romantic connection, but you're kind and curious and stay open, they'll be like, you know what? I actually think you should meet my best friend. Like, I've heard of that happening so many times, and you do yourself such a disservice if you get there and you're like, ugh, it's not for me. Okay, now I'm shut down and I'm just waiting to get out of here. Or the people who go in and are like, so what are you looking for a relationship? It's like, do you have to talk about that on the first date? That's not first date. Like, we'll all figure out what we're looking for. They certainly don't know what they're looking for right now. Just get curious. Talk about a bug on the sidewalk. I always say start in the middle of a conversation. Don't get there and be like, so how was your day? Like, get there and be like, you will not believe what happened on the way here, you know, and just jump in and get to know a person. Have a fun time.
Yeah. So I appreciate those perspectives. I agree with you about the mindset of, boy, it's a lot of pressure to be thinking, oh, could this be something special? The solo listener, I think, has an advantage in some way because they might be already ambivalent about partnering up anyways. And so in that way, there's sort of more degrees of freedom in terms of approaching a coffee or a drink. I always think of it as like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to meet a new person. Exactly. If it goes horribly awry, I have a great story.
Great story. Love it.
I have a great story. So there's almost no downside that comes from meeting someone that at least at the outset you're excited to meet. Yes. And that was my point about the flirting, Jill, is like, I think it's nice to say to someone something about you're looking forward to meeting them, something that's meaningful with regard to them. Because not saying something could be a strategy too. You know, so I think that's to your point about being authentic. Like, if it's in your nature to do that, then it seems okay, I guess.
Totally. And Dahlia, you know, I stalked your website before.
And what a website it is. What is that? What's the name of that website, Dahlia?
Is it just my name? Dahlia?
I think it is DahliaKarnofsky.com or something like that.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but I looked at it, and I have to say that something I really loved about it was that how often you mention fun. That it's supposed to be fun, and we forget that sometimes when we think about the possible outcomes and the consequences and all that. And I think if we, it was funny. I was like, gosh, now what am I going to say? Because Dahlia's going to be talking about fun. I have to come up with something else. But I do think you're absolutely right in that regard, and that dating is not always going to be like, I think when you go into it with a lot of expectations, and a lot of ideas about what is going to happen and what this is going to mean, you forget to just sort of be there and get to know the person. And here's the thing. It's probably not going to go how you think it's going to go. It's probably, you don't know how it's going to turn out. So you might as well just go and see. And like you said, be open to it. And, I don't know. I have this example. I think it's a good parallel example. A really good friend of mine is a competitive dancer. And she said she does her best dancing in a competition when she goes in and she looks at the field and she thinks, I don't think I'm expected to place in this competition. I don't think I'm expected to win here. So you know what? Whatever. I'm just going to go up there and dance. And she said those are the times when she has her best dances. And she might not win the competition, but that's when she feels her best and does her best. So I think that says a lot about when you're not thinking about the outcome, when you're not thinking that you have this way that it's supposed to go, you can actually have the best time and feel your best and do your best and have the most fun along the way. And then no matter what happens, you've sort of won, I guess.
Right.
This is a little quiz for my two guests. So right before we went on the air, what did I say?
You said have fun. You said be yourself and have fun.
I said be authentic and have fun, which is exactly, Jill saying be authentic and Dahlia saying have fun. The same rules apply for a date.
Are we on a date right now?
We're on a date. Surprise! All of that said, too, just one little thought. If there's something that's keeping you from having fun on the date, you're hungry, you're cold, you want to sit somewhere else, you need a drink.
Your legs are hairy.
Say it. Put it out there for your date to help you have a better time.
That's great.
That's such great advice because you might name something that they were thinking too.
Exactly. I know a woman who went on a date who she now lives with this man, but on the first half of the date, he was just talking and not asking her any questions. She had to go to the bathroom. She goes, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And when I come back, if you don't start asking me questions about myself, I'm leaving. And he was like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing that because people get nervous.
Yes.
And now, bliss, living together, whatever, it's just about being honest, being authentic. And if there's something that can happen to make you happier, why would you not say that?
Yeah, good for her. That's great. So now I'm going to switch that around. That's a good segue for the meeting, the actual meeting, because we're already in there talking about it because it's such a big part of this process. And so how to deal with the opposite of that situation, Dahlia, where you're getting interviewed. So the person comes in, they don't have the fun authenticity perspective here, and they've got their clipboard out and they've got their checklist and they're asking you the really hard hitting questions, red
I hate
flags,
it when
deal
they shine
breakers,
the spotlight in my face too.
And I think that happens because people are tired of dating. They have goals.
Sure.
They know what they like, or they think they know what they like, what they want, and so on. So what do you think?
I think, first of all, that person needs to be sent to me for some coaching because I would never allow that.
Actually, that's nice. I'm glad you said that because what I have been talking about this as someone who feels like he gets interviewed a lot, but there are listeners who are interviewers. And so I think it's important for them to hear how off-putting that is.
It's extremely off-putting, extremely. And I think if there's not a natural back and forth, like it's fine to ask a question, but then once the person answers, you have to have kind of sharing your experience as well. If you're just firing off questions, they don't feel like you're listening to them. They feel like you're trying to get through a checklist. You ask a question for the purpose of it hopefully turning into an interesting dialogue where two people actually get to know each other better. Not just to get like, okay, he answered that question. It's a 7. Okay.
Yes.
So I think listening. And so I think if someone is doing that to you, that's a tough one. You want to kind of maybe try and slow their rhythm down a little bit. Like you want to do something to kind of get through to them what they're doing. And I think it would look like, well, one, asking them questions back, is a big one. So if they're just asking, you can be like, okay, but I'd love to hear something about you. What are you passionate about? Or, some other back pocket question you have. Worst case scenario, I think you could be like, I'm having such a great time with you. You're asking me a lot of questions and I just feel like I want to know more about you. It's just kind of like being honest with them. They might not realize they're doing it. Again, nerves. I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt because most people are not professional daters. And you can just, tell me a story about your childhood. Like you can stop it in its tracks.
Have you seen any good bugs on the sidewalk lately?
Yeah.
I was totally thinking that because here's my take on this. I think it comes back down to the authenticity. I think some of the best dates I've ever been on have been the ones where I walked away from the date and I'm like, and my friends would ask me, does he have any brothers and sisters? Where is he from? What does he do? And I'm like, I don't know. We didn't cover any of that. Like because we were talking about stuff like bugs on the sidewalk. I don't mean to harp on that point, but you get the idea. It represents to me banter.
Right.
And that for me personally is my favorite thing. If it feels like an interview where I got a bunch of statistics on the guy, but I don't really know how he feels or if he has a sense of humor, then maybe it's worth a second date if there weren't any real red flags, as we said. But if there was banter that flowed, then I know really there could be something there. But that's me. For someone who's maybe a little more serious about finding a father for her children, maybe she needs more of an interview and wants more of an interview. Maybe. I don't know. And if that's the case...
Dahlia's shaking her
Dahlia's like, no, don't do that.
An interview never works. It will never, ever work. It will not work.
So, first of all, I will point this out. This is for the guys who are listening. Again, traditional kind of roles. Guys, you cannot just do all the talking and not contribute and ask. Because there's a lot of men out there who are like, I love it. You know what I mean? Just keep them coming. You know what I mean? Keep these questions coming.
They love when the women are just asking them questions.
They do in that way. And so that contributes, I think, a little bit to that. It's not, and I think it's not right because the woman walks away and she goes, he doesn't care about me. He's not interested in me. You know what I mean? So I think this idea of banter and fun and flirt and the middle of the conversation is a very nice way to put this. But your point about, you were shaking your head about the father of your children thing, Dahlia.
Well, because also like a person you just met, if you say, so are you looking for a relationship in your future? They're going to say, oh yeah, yes. Is that going to give you any information? No, it is not. Anyone you interview with those type of questions early on, they can say whatever you want to hear. And then you're going to be so shocked when it turns out not to be true. I have a client who false paraded this all the time. She's always like, he said he was looking for a love and a wife and he wants to have kids right away. And then guess what? After 3 dates, he's not interested. And he says, I think you're just at a different place in your life than I am. And I'm not really looking for a kid. And she's like, but he said on the first date. And I'm like, because they know what you want to hear and they're just trying to get the answers right. So you're never going to get the information you need from that kind of interview. That is going to come out in little hints throughout the relationship, and you're eventually going to have a real conversation if you need to. But like your first date, just find out what they care about, what they're passionate about, and if you like hanging out with them.
I think that's a fair point. First of all, I don't like it when people lie or misrepresent. And it's in some ways, it's not an outright lie.
No, it's not.
What it is, and this is a problem with the apps, and it's a problem with these conversations more generally, is you say to someone, so what do you want? The honest answer is, well, it depends.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly.
I could want the full boat.
Yep.
Or I could want some friends with benefits,
Sure.
a couple dates, and a heavy makeout session. It could be, this is it. The next 45 minutes is all I want. You know what I mean?
I don't even want that. Yeah, totally.
So the honest answer is, well, it depends on how much we click and what's going on and how busy I am with work and what, you know what I mean? And whether there's a global pandemic and, and so on. And yet everybody, the apps are like, got to decide.
Yeah.
Do you want this, or this? But really it should be, well, you could check all of these things. Like, I might want something casual. I might want something serious. I think we should just
always assume it depends. It depends if you're a match. And that will determine what they want with you.
I want casual, and then 3 months from now, it might become more than casual.
Exactly.
That's a tough, I like when people are honest. It'd be nice to have more of that where someone says, right now I'd like something casual, but almost all of my relationships started off casual. It takes 2 or 3 months for me to decide that I want to be exclusive with someone.
Totally.
I want someone to be a traditional girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever that might be.
Yeah, no, like I said, for me personally, the most important thing to me is, do I enjoy this person's company? Do I like what they say and how they think and how they behave? And everything, I completely agree. Everything depends on that for me. Mm-hmm. I just wonder, though, if there are perhaps a segment of the population who they don't even want, and I don't know if they're shooting themselves in the foot, and this is something maybe they'll evolve to over lots of disappointment in dating from doing the interview and not getting what they want. But my gosh, if that's where that person is at, I don't know if there's any changing it except through their own series of unsuccessful experiences.
Well, then they need to go to a sperm bank where you can look up all of those answers.
Right.
They're all written down for you. You can get, it's like any information you could get from a sperm bank should not be questions on a first date.
Oh my God, that's so good.
Words to live by.
That's so good.
That's it.
Yeah, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, and I think it's very difficult for people to do, and that's to ask for what they want in the sense of responding to that question. You know what I mean? Like to if we're going to lean into the authenticity, what you have to do is risk the person who has the checklist, who might actually be a good partner, going away, versus to misrepresent yourself and do harm.
Yeah.
To that person.
I definitely have some thoughts on that too, because I feel like I think it's important to not misrepresent and to be really honest. I also think it's important not to have an attack of honesty like too early on. Because I've definitely been, maybe it was messaging or maybe it was a date, I'm not sure, but where a guy said, okay, here's my situation. And I don't think we had even met yet. I think this was in a message. And he said, Dahlia's eyes just got really wide. She was like, oh God, no. But yeah. And then there was the litany of the laundry list of problems. And I actually was like, at that point I was like, oh gosh, I'm so turned off, because here's the thing. I don't know anything good about you yet to balance out all these potential issues.
Right.
So I think before you give all the person all the reasons that it might not work out or all the reasons not to like you, give them a few reasons to like you.
Yes.
That's well said.
Totally.
Right? Do that first before, and I don't think it's being dishonest. You don't have to, like I said, have an attack of honesty before you've even met the person. Because there are also some true things about you that are super positive and green lights and, all that. So build a little rapport, build a little connection, build a foundation before you take a sledgehammer to it, potentially,
Hopefully never take a sledgehammer to it.
Yeah,
But, whatever you're into.
Yeah, exactly. So before you give the person all the reasons to maybe say no, give them a few reasons to say yes. And I don't think that's being dishonest. I think that's just like building something before you say, here's where we might have some challenges.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. Let me ask a few quick ones here. So Dahlia very eloquently said, if you could find out about it at a sperm bank, donor profile, is there anything else to not talk about on a date?
I would say my number one that people do all the time because they're nervous and they default to it is talking about dating on your date. How's the apps for you? Do you do this a lot? What was your worst first date? What's your most embarrassing date? How long have you been dating? Tell me about your past relationships. Why would you ever talk about that on a first date? That is like ultimate friend zone. It is not sexy. It is not interesting. It does not matter. Past relationships don't even matter unless it's something that's going to significantly affect the way you are in this relationship. And then that can come out later. But on a first date to talk about dating makes absolutely no sense to me. That's what I'll say.
I totally agree. Because when they're like, so what have your nightmare dates been? I'm like, I don't know, maybe this one.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have nothing else to ask me about? It's like, it's like, I understand. We know we both have that in common. We are both dating and I have nothing else to talk about. So, but just don't. Just ask them about the bug they saw on the sidewalk.
That's great. Thank you. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
I'm not don't talk about politics or don't talk about religion. Like, if those things are important in your life, authenticity, talk about them, Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I'm not I don't have really don't talk abouts except for what I just said.
Yeah, that's great. What about the wrapping the date up? So a listener asked, I know this is a stupid question, but I literally turned down a lunch date with a guy who was adorable because I was so stressed out over thinking about how to handle the moment the check came to the table. Not that I don't want to pay, it's just awkward.
Well, I have some thoughts, but you're both not going to like them, so...
I already know it. I know what Dahlia's thoughts are. Jill, do you know what her thoughts are?
No, I have no ESP or mind reading abilities.
The guy pays. The guy picks up the check.
And the woman shouldn't even do the reach because I think it's fake, and they know it's fake. Unless my exception to that is if you know you don't like the guy or you're not into him in that way, then it's a very clear signal when you offer to split that it's platonic for you. For most women. Now, there are some that insist on being equals, air quotes, and paying because that's who they are, and that's fine. That's fine if that's your thing. But I just think women put in so much financially in so many other ways. There's also still a huge pay gap, and I call it the paternity tax. Patriarchy tax, not paternity tax. Patriarchy tax. Sorry, this is where we're at. I put my safety and security at risk. And unless you're a woman who really that grinds your gears, I think you should let the man pay. And then on the second or third date, you can be like, would you like to split it? Or let's say you go to another bar, you can be like, I'll get this round. Or if you get coffee after lunch, you can be like, I'll get the coffee. That's nice. But that's my stance.
So Dahlia, you think I'm going to disagree with you. I'm not going to disagree, but I'm going to disagree with the reasoning.
Okay.
Huh.
So without getting into the economics of the pay gap and all those things or any of this stuff, I go by the thing is I ask, I pay. And the reason I do that is because it's just the norm.
I like that.
And so why fight against this current? And, even though I consider myself a feminist and I have egalitarian ideals and the guy picking up the check doesn't jive with those things, it's just so common that it's the best default to do. And so I just pick it up happily and I resist any attempts to have it split. But I won't if we go somewhere else and the person says, oh, let me buy a drink or something like that. You know what I mean? I might resist a little bit, but I'm not going to put someone out
Right.
who's being authentic.
Right.
So I come to the same conclusion as you, but for wildly different reasons.
I'm into your reasons too. I'm into all reasons for this.
So Jill, you're
Yes.
gonna go against the grain?
No. So for me personally, I have to say, and this is traditional, but I love feeling female, and I love it when a man kind of feels like the man, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who don't like that, but that's how I feel. I love that feeling of being, I don't know, taken out by the man, particularly on the first date. I just think that's really a nice, like, masculine, feminine thing. And I enjoy it. And I'm a woman who takes care of myself. I mean, I have been independent and supporting myself for years and years and years. And yet I still love it when a guy takes me out on a date. That being said, if that's not you, if you have a different slant on it, I think for that woman who wrote you that email, she can always ask, like, nothing dispels awkwardness like saying, hey, this is awkward, right? So if she's feeling awkward, I think a great thing for her to do in that moment is to say, like, oh my gosh, here's the awkward moment where the check comes and I never know what to do. Just kind of diffuse the bomb by saying something about it. And then you learn something about the guy. Then you're being yourself, and you learn something about the guy by how he reacts. And, maybe he says, you know what? I get it. I hear you, but I would love to take you out. So is it okay if I pay for it and you want to pay for the next one? Or we can talk about it the next time it comes up. But gosh, that feels really sad to have it be a reason not to go on a date at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but I think it's illustrative because my guess is the three of us are pretty good at this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people aren't pretty good at it.
True.
And so it's a really fraught
Yeah.
process. I mean, it's why I'm doing this podcast.
I was going to say that's why we're here. It's so that someone who feels more uncomfortable with it can listen to this and be like, oh, maybe I can just say something when that moment comes.
Well,
And
but Peter,
try it.
I just love what you said about, because then you can apply to non-gender stereotypes that
Yes.
whoever does the asking, whoever has the request is saying, I would like to take you out. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yes. I ask, I pay.
I totally
Yeah.
agree. Like if I've asked a guy out and the bill
Yeah.
comes, I look at him and I say, this was my stupid idea. Can I pay for it?
I will give you one exception to this, and it was a woman who, it started off a little bit casually, but we ended up dating for over a year. And I remember this distinctly. We went out to, it was like a Thai restaurant in her neighborhood, and it was our first or second. It was early. It could have been our third, maybe, but not even that early, I think. The bill came, check came. I went to pick it up, and she offered, and I said, no. And she goes, really? She goes, if you don't split this with me, it will be a problem.
Some people have that. I think
And-
that's
Yeah.
fair.
And it was and that was for our entire relationship.
Wow.
We would split a check or we would alternate. I mean, and she even at one point like treated me to a weekend away in a boutique hotel. And I have to tell you, it was refreshing.
Yeah.
And it was neat to have that different experience.
Because she's being
as a result.
her, and like you
Yes.
responded well to it. If
Totally.
the guy who doesn't respond well to it, that's not her guy.
Right.
That's
You
right.
know?
Right.
Yeah, the guy who couldn't be comfortable
Right. Because clearly,
allowing himself to be treated for a weekend.
yes. Because clearly that was something she had to do. She felt very strongly about that. She said something to you. And what I love about that too is that she risked it. She risked saying something to be true to who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might not have reacted well to it, and then she risked losing you, but she was true to who she was, and it went well because you were open to it. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
That's a nice exception. So, I think that's nice because it shows you that there's not one rule for everyone.
Yes.
Last thing, you're wrapping up the meeting, the date. You're on the sidewalk. What happens? Jill, what happens?
I was hoping you would ask Dahlia.
I know, I have been doing that.
Because I am so bad at goodbyes. Talk about awkward. I can extend a goodbye and hem and haw and stammer like nobody's business. It is so bad. And I don't know how to just like quickly wrap it up. So
you want to punt to Dahlia?
Can I punt to Dahlia, please?
Yes, of course. She's the pro.
I'm a pro. I think, okay. I think I am a huge fan of the kiss. I think you got a lot of information from that. And it can make you attracted to someone that you didn't know you were. However, if you're really not feeling it, you're not a first date person, that's totally fine with me too. But, a lot of people will say, well, what if I want the kiss and he doesn't kiss me? I say, you can kiss me. Kind of hot. Or if you would like to kiss and you're not sure if you should, you can always say, can I kiss you? Which is a beautiful thing to do.
Yes.
I think it's really nice to make sure whoever needs it, that they're safe, that they're getting in their Uber. You say, text me when you get home. I think generally, and I work also with a matchmaking company, and so I work with, kind of very traditional gender roles a lot. So usually the rule for the girl, if she would like to go out again, is say, thank you so much. I had such a great time. I'd love to do it again. Let me know. Mm-hmm. Which is that dropping the hanky of like, I'm telling you yes, but I'm putting it in your court and you have to do something if you want. For guys or for whoever is initiating, I'll say, I really love to say, make a plan for the next date before even leaving. Like,
oh, no.
No?
We're fighting.
Okay. I mean, I think if you're clearly both into each other, and let's say she said something like, oh, I love getting tacos at this place. And you said, okay, we should do that on Wednesday. Or like, do you want to get tacos at that place you said on Wednesday? Like, there's something, because nowadays everyone is so wishy-washy and like, we should do this again sometime. We should hang out sometime. Yeah, you were cool. We should chill again sometime. It's like, if you can be the decisive, proactive person who's like, I like you so much that I'm willing to risk it, I think that says a lot.
We're not fighting, but I want to offer some counters and some. And
I know sometimes it puts people in an awkward position. So
it's fair.
That's the part I would say. If you're not comfortable doing that, if you're not sure how it went or whatever, then just, say goodnight. Thank you. Had such a great time. Text me when you get home. Let me know you're safe.
Okay. All right. This is great. Especially because Jill's like, I don't know what to do. So she could watch us battle this out. So about the kissing thing, I think as a guy, I like the idea of asking. If you're unsure, you can ask. There is another little bit of a cheat code, which is you look into the person's eyes and then you move forward. And what will often happen, if she wants to kiss you, she will kiss you. If she doesn't, she'll turn her cheek and you give her a peck on the cheek, or, like that kind of a thing. I don't feel pressure to have a kiss, at the end of a night kind of a thing. If I know I like someone.
You're also so tall. She has a long time to get away.
She can be in the car and in bed by the time I get down there.
And you're like, wait.
But to your point about sort of solidifying attraction, I had this exactly like that. The car was coming and just reaching, and it was like, the kiss was out of this world. And ended up dating the woman, and she is an extraordinary kisser. You know what I mean? It was like one of the, and which is a matching process, right?
Totally.
Because everybody thinks they're a great kisser, and everybody's a good kisser if you match them up with the right person. But you don't know till you try. But the point about asking during, I prefer a cooling off period. I like to sleep on it.
That's fine.
And I would say, as the person who asked, you should always thank them. Mm-hmm. So even if there's no intention of going out again, I think it's important to acknowledge that person. They took a risk. They spent their time. They got dressed up. They did all those things. And to send, just a text message typically, right, that just said, thanks so much for meeting last night. I enjoyed talking to you, or whatever that could be.
I love that.
And then if you don't want to go out again, full stop.
Yep. Although you could say, Well, and this I say more for when people get asked out again and they're not interested. That you can say, I had such a great time with you. I didn't feel a romantic connection, but I wish you the best of luck, because it's so much better than ghosting or giving some other excuse.
100%.
I find that it's difficult. I think that it's, I feel like we've talked about this offline or in the previous one, but I think as the person who asked on the first date and sort of the expected person to ask again, I think it's awkward and maybe even mean to tell someone you're not going to ask them out again.
Oh, no.
Right. And so to me, it's like you say you had a nice time and then you just don't ask.
Yes.
Or you say you had a nice time and then you ask. And then it's up to that person to, and then if someone presses you, you just say, oh, it's not the right chemistry.
Yeah. I think a cooling off period is fine. I just think if you do decide to do it, you want to be specific, you want to be proactive, you want to show them your enthusiasm a little bit.
Of course. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think it's important to be a good citizen of the dating world. Because as a world where we influence each other, and we create the, I hate the word vibe, but we create the feeling.
It comes up a lot. Yeah.
We create the atmosphere. We're part of the group that makes the feeling, And I think it's easy to get frustrated because there are a lot of people who ghost and who aren't great citizens of the dating world, who lie, that kind of thing. And so I think particularly where this is concerned, it's a place where people can get really hurt or confused. So I think it's really nice to give someone clarity, especially if you can tell that they're interested in you and you're not interested. It's really nice, like you said, to say, thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you, but I don't see us as a match. So I don't think we should go out again. But thank you so much, And totally. That's all you have to say, and it just gives that person that bit of respect and kindness, so that, because I really think you influence how that person feels. Like if you don't do that, then they get more frustrated, and then they're less apt to behave like a good citizen of the dating world, and they'll just ghost people too. So I think we can bring up the level as opposed to keeping it low. And
Jill,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, Jill, that is like such a good parting thought.
Yes.
Oh, really?
It's such a great parting thought in terms of, I can't say it better myself. So I'm going to, can I let that stand?
Yes.
I love that.
And Dahlia, do you have a parting thought? Because I think we've covered the planning, the prep, the meeting, and we just covered the follow-up. So we've got through all of these steps that I had promised at the beginning of this. Anything you want to add to this wonderful idea that Jill just had?
I think, in general, raising the dating karma is the way to go, and making other people feel better and assuming positive intent. And just remembering that this is a process and it takes a long time. And if you walked into a bar with 100 people in it, it's not even necessarily true that one of them would be the person you're going to date. So people who are trying to shortcut the process or make it results oriented, I talk a lot about this in my coaching, is just it has to be a process, and you have to find a way for you to enjoy the process. So figure out how you can enjoy it, what can make it fun for you. If you need to take a break, and come back in with a positive attitude and expecting it to be a journey. And just every date you have is an opportunity for a great story, a business connection, a friendship, or, your partner, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think given the listenership here, there are some special considerations, which is not everybody might be on that track
totally
of 2.5 kids and a white picket fence and so on. But I think that everything that we've said is applicable to the solo dater, because none of what you're suggesting is specific to that person who's looking for the very traditional approach. So all the normal caveats with regard to recognizing the sort of kind of limited traditional sort of gender role stereotypes that we've dealt with here. I think I should follow this up at some point with a sort of more unconventional dating, how to date kind of podcast. I think that would be very useful. So I want to say thank you to both of you for your generous time, thoughts, ideas. And until next time, I'll say cheers and
Thank you.
onwards.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. Thanks for having me back on the podcast.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.com. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.